and Constance Smedley, who married the painter Maxwell Armfield. They had a very active life in book illustration, the arts, theatre, both here and in America. When they moved to the village of West Wycombe, she was extremely ill, disabled, and she died in 1941. And her husband Maxwell buried her here in this slightly curious monument. Now, being an active campaigner for the rights of ladies to go into society, and having set up something called the Ladies Athenaeum Society, which still exists today, Constance is generally remembered for slightly kind of pastel-y Victorian style books and novels that wouldn't really be very interesting to anybody at all. She was an active Christian Scientist, and at her death, strangely, her husband Maxwell threw himself into a study of the occult. Why that happened, no one's entirely sure. There are some indications that he wrote works, books of poetry, and a section of Christmas carols, actually, which almost seem to be channeled communications, like spiritual communications with Constance. We don't know why. Within a very short period of time after her death, he was writing pamphlets with themes drawn directly from the area here, including one book of poems which has a very stylised map of the caves on the front, and a very curious poem which refers to two keys, a gold key and a silver key, one being the key of heaven, one being the key of hell, which I will give you on a scarlet thread when I am dead. Now, these small pamphlets and these books of poems were almost all of them written under aliases, or with the help of other people who lived locally, many of whom are entirely forgotten apart from this. Maxwell's occult interests would undoubtedly have touched other people, inspired other people, and fed into the local store of legends. There is no historical literature behind this apart from a large collection of notebooks and his letters at the Tate Gallery, which is being slowly sifted through by about half a dozen different people, doing it for different reasons, working on different projects. And if the day comes when those people will actually get together and share their research and bring it out, then we'll all know a lot more. At the exhibition later, there's a collection of these pamphlets and some of the documents and pictures which will give you an idea of what he was doing. If, as we believe, the local store of wisdom or tradition that survived after the demise of the Hellfire Club found its way through local families, farm labourers, chairmakers, and then was, I suppose if you like, given a twist by Maxwell Armfield and then survived to today, where we are now with what appears to be a very kind of gentle interest in colour symbolism and flower symbolism and astrology is probably more to do with him and his interests than anything else, I would suggest. Maybe wrong, but we don't know. What's fascinating is that for a long time, some of the material has existed in what appears to be a historical vacuum. We knew what it was, we knew what to do with it, but we didn't know where it came from. The connection between Maxwell Armfield and the village was fairly recent, within the last 10 years, and that understanding has gathered apace, which is why, generally speaking, you're here today, and why we're in a position where we're coming out and talking to people and are able to talk to people. Because without a historical context, it's all very, very, very flimsy. Local people feel a connection, they respond to that connection, but it doesn't travel any further. It wouldn't go to the States, it wouldn't go to Oxford, even. But now, going from an essential local connection, we're able to see that there's an essential concept or group of concepts which can be transferred from one place, here, to other places, because there is a universal symbolism which is at work in the minds of people. So this point here, this grave here, with its slightly curious font style arrangement, is actually a point of departure between two histories. If you look at it, it appears to be made up of lots of little tiles. Armfield was deeply interested in sacred geometry and the golden section, and the proportions of all of these tiles depend entirely upon his studies of the golden section. And it's as a result of that, and the convergence of his interests in painting, sacred geometry, architecture, mathematics behind nature, astrology and theosophy that informed his work all the way up to his death in 1972, including books on the tarot, on sacred geometry, on colour theory. It's not Aleister Crowley, and it's not the Golden Dawn. It's actually very small, very, very small indeed, and quite peculiar and cranky and eccentric. But it is real and it is local. I was surprised to find that the Hellfire Club locally were interested in, well, we jokingly called it Aunt Nancy's psychic piano. You had a bit of cardboard with an alphabet on it, and you put it up against a mirror, and you touched various letters and tried to communicate over a distance with another person with another piece of cardboard. Really exciting stuff. But the object of it appeared to be controlled communication. Controlled. Whether to prove that you could do it or to prove that you couldn't do it. We weren't sure. Interesting. Strange object. A connection nonetheless. Gathering together over a period of years what appeared to be elements of the original Hellfire Club, connecting them using story, local legend, people's family histories, connecting them into a cohesive picture, has given us a framework in which we're able to operate as individuals. Now, how many people here live in towns, cities? Everybody? Most people?
Yeah.
Okay. In your memory in the last 20 years, have you seen the industry, trades and society of those towns and cities radically changed? Yeah? That's happened here. And within the last, I think, 15 years, I wouldn't recognise anybody. I went out for a drink last night in a pub I used to go into, didn't recognise a person. So all of the people who would have brought me here, spoken to me about details like this, and the other grave over there, the dodecahedron grave, and referred to it as a particular stone or a key or something like that, those people are gone. One guy's gone to Texas, someone else lives in Brighton, someone else lives in Scotland, someone else has got a kid, doesn't come out anymore, you know, blah blah. I've moved up to Lincolnshire. I don't live here anymore. Is there anybody who lives here who remembers everything? Or do the people who now live here remember a part of something, but not all of it? I mean, I don't know if remembering everything is what's really important. Maybe what's really important is for new people to come here and connect with what they feel is here, and then to take that away. No one really knows. No one really knows. What we are aware of, though, is that there are different levels of activity going on, whether within the individual or within the groups that are established and becoming established, that you could call emotional, rational, subconscious, psychic, whatever you want to call it. The club itself has no doctrine about whether there is a psychic experience, whether it's real, whether there's a religious element to it or anything. Individuals feel that there is or that there may be, and that's how they relate to a very simple nuts and bolts kind of presentation of the mystery of the universe. But it is still very much a mystery. And maintaining that mystery and allowing it to be solved by everyone in their own way is really the point of this place. In a few minutes we'll be able to go into the mausoleum. Is anyone here aware of the history of the mausoleum as opposed to it just being a place where remains are stored? Does anyone know about the connection between the Hellfire Club and the French author Francois Rabelais? Okay, I can see some heads nodding and some people. That big building on the other side that we are shortly to go into is, well, it's a large brick and flint building, slightly cumbersome, not particularly elegant, but it's built on a plan described in a book that's 500 years old. Now, the Dashwood Circle were motivated by a number of, I suppose you could call them, social, political or religious ideals. One of those was the ideal of the Abbey of Feline, which has been taken up by a number of people in history, including Aleister Crowley and various other people. In the classical kind of presentation of the Abbey of Feline, what you have is a six-sided building, and in every side of that building, the arts and the sciences could be studied equally by men and women, freely. They could dress as they wish, get up when they wish, eat as they wish, and so on and so forth. The motto, do what thou wilt, or face a curvy draw, or however you want to put it, as an essential part of that philosophy, although that's part of common knowledge, but what isn't necessarily part of common knowledge is that in Rabelais' French book, the proportions of his Abbey of Theleme have very, very specific numbers. There's a specific distance between the towers, there's a specific height of the walls, there's a very, very, very specific number of steps, and so on. Now, if you go back to early studies of the Hebrew Kabbalah, it's a bit convoluted, but the numbers that Rabelais gives, the actual numerical proportions of this abbey, correspond exactly with the numbers of Hebrew words related to the Kabbalistic tree of life. Kether, Tifereth, Malkuth, etc. That building there, whether its actual physical proportions resonate with those or not, that building there is a very, very, very powerful, if you like, magnet, battery, charger, symbol, however you want to put it, however you think of it. It is an Abbey of Theleme. It does contain the remains of deceased individuals, but it's actually a beacon of light for those individuals who wish to live a free, happy, equal life amongst other equals. Quite a tough thing to achieve. Quite a tough thing to achieve. But on a small scale, it can be done on an experimental level by, say, a Rosicrucian group, a meditation group, something like that. And we try, where possible, to achieve that within what we call a chapter, where people of very different backgrounds get together in what appears to be a very simple social format and talk. And after that basic talk, we begin to understand that somebody might have an interest in some spirituality, and another person has an experience of a dream or something, and after a while a web begins to form between those individuals, and they learn something very special about themselves and about others that could not be learned in any other way. They learn to accept, to understand, to be free, and allow others to be free, to not put constraints upon one another or upon themselves. They learn to experiment, perhaps push themselves to a point of danger, but then come back, to go within and come out. One of the least understood aspects of everything around us here, the Golden Ball, the mausoleum and the caves, is actually the journey back up to the light. The powerful draw of the darkness about the whole Hellfire Club is actually not the point. It does exist, but the really important thing here is the light. It's the light. And its power to transform and change us very quietly, very gently, and unobtrusively. So a person will go in and come out being exactly who they were, but more so. There will be just something different.
LBX.
They won't have changed their opinions, they won't have a new dogma, they won't have a doctrine, they won't be preaching to anybody, but they will just be slightly different. Well, that's enough of me. But yeah, that's an important, I think, modern historical sign, actually. Unfortunately, I did communicate with the Contemporary Ladies Athenaeum Society that Constance founded, and I let them know that her grave was falling apart. But they weren't interested in doing anything to keep it up, which is a pity. I'm hoping that perhaps something can be done with it, because if it's understood, it's actually a very beautiful monument in its own way.
Eamonn, can you say something about the dodecahedron?
Can I? Yes. It appears in a number of Maxwell Armfield sketches. It appears in some of his paintings. he spent many, many years incorporating the geometry of the dodecahedron in his work. It's one of,
you just point it down.
oh yes, yes. It's a grave further away. It doesn't relate to the Armfield family, it relates to another family who may be connected to Armfield, but we're not entirely sure. But that and the other, what are called the Platonic solids, do figure very strongly in what has come to be regarded as the Hellfire Club tradition. And understanding its place and what it means. I'm sure they were standing on someone's grave. Right, they weren't listening.
Wow. Oh, I see it.
We're going over to
Let's have a look.
You're alive.